So, in my recent posts, I've been talking about the importance of self knowledge and self love, of healing the relationship we have with ourselves, learning to love ourselves, and how that is a necessary part of loving God. Now, you may be wondering, what about self denial and what about all that talk about laying down my life for Christ's sake, right? Because Jesus did say in the Gospels that in order to be His disciple, I need to pick up my cross and follow Him, right? I need to deny myself, pick up my cross and follow Him, and I also need to be willing to lose my life, because He said that those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for His sake, Jesus' sake, right? We'll save it. We'll find life in laying our lives down. Now, this tension, or this dilemma, you could call it, has been one that I also lived with and struggled with for a very long time, for years, because what I was familiar with is the whole idea about self-denial, about laying my life down for others. And I tried so hard to do that, because I really wanted to be His disciple. I wanted to follow Him. I loved Him, in the ways that I knew how. And I wanted God's love, right? So what never occurred to me is how is this meant to work? Is it a transaction? Is it a transaction that if I deny myself what I want, if I deny my desires, that's in a sense, my part to play, and then in return, God will bless me, God will love me? Is it that I have to lay my life down, I have to be willing to lose my life? And in my understanding, that meant actually, in a sense, that my happiness shouldn't matter that much. I should be willing to lose my happiness, right, if I wanted to follow Christ, because He said if I wanted to save my life, I will lose it. So I'm not talking now about the words per se in the Gospels. I want to put the highlight on our interpretation of it, right? Because whatever it is that we read, that we hear, we receive it in the mode of the receiver, as St. Thomas Aquinas would say. We will interpret it and understand it through the lens that we have, through the scripts that we have. We cannot help but do so. We cannot help but interpret and understand things through the lens of our personal experience. That's what it means to be human. So for the longest time, and I never realized it, the posture of my heart when I tried to lay my life down, when I tried to deny myself, was one of scarcity. Okay, I didn't really feel I had a choice, because if I wanted to be close to God, it felt like if I wanted to be close to God, then I have to deny myself. So it became a transaction. It wasn't consciously a transaction, right? But it became subconsciously, in practice, a transaction. The posture of my heart was actually one of insecurity and fear, because if I didn't do this, then maybe God wouldn't love me. Again, this is subconscious, right? So, but little wonder then, if I was approaching my discipleship, or what I thought to be discipleship, in the form of a transaction. I was very self-righteous, because I held myself to very high standards, and I held other people to very high standards out of the best intentions, because I thought that's how it worked. So it puzzled me and pained me when the reality of my life and relationships showed me that I was still so short on love, right? Really, really so short on love, even when I was trying my best, right? And I was short on love, not just for others, but for myself. I was so hard on myself every time I fell short. So I began to see from the fruit that I was bearing, that, there was still something lacking. And I often brought that into prayer, of course, asking God to give me grace, more love, so that I could love people, telling Him I really wanted to follow Him. Please help me. Then one day, this thought came to me in prayer, right? Felt like God was responding to my questions. And I felt Him ask me, and what is this life that you're laying down? what kind of life are you laying down? Is it a life that's, that's so dry and empty and fearful that you're laying down? Or is it a life that is filled with joy and love that you're laying down? What does it mean to lay down your life? And he reminded me two things also from scripture. One, he reminded me that, he came to give life, and life to the full, abundant life, right? So he asked me, do you know yet that abundant life? Have you experienced it? Are you living that abundant life yet? Because if you're not, maybe you haven't experienced what it's like to really be alive, right? The life that I came to give. And secondly, he reminded me, and it's also in scripture, that he said that when he laid his life down, Jesus said, no one takes my life from me. I lay it down of my own accord. He laid down of his own free will. And I felt he was asking me, are you laying down your life truly of your own free will? Do you really want to? Are you really choosing to out of love? And I realized the answer was no to both questions. No, I don't yet know what that life is. I know my life is not yet that abundant life, right? I mean, it's been getting better, but surely there must be more. So no to that question. And secondly, I realized, oh my gosh, no, I'm not laying my life down truly of my own accord. I'm kind of like forcing myself to do so because I'm supposed to, right? Because it's there in scripture. I thought that that's what you wanted me to do, Lord, that if I were to follow you, I have to lay my life down. Then I realized, but that's not the way Christ laid his life down. And that's not the way he's inviting us to lay our life down either. And I realized that I am not there. I am not at that point where I can say, I really freely choose to lay my life down. That I'm not saying that anybody's taking it from me, not even that God is trying to take my life from me, right? But that I choose of my own accord. And I realized that that stance, that posture of the heart is one of great freedom that Christ had. Imagine that, right? That no one takes my life from me. I freely choose to. And I wanted to be able to do that. But the reality was, I'm far from being able to do that. I've been using the brute strength of my will. It's like to power through and make myself give things up, to deny my desires and wants. And no wonder so many things will, go wrong. No wonder every now and then things will explode because I keep suppressing my emotions, denying to myself what is it I actually really want or what I need. I keep ignoring my boundaries, my limits, all in the name of discipleship. And was it little wonder that I was burning out and miserable and sad and resentful and angry? I hadn't learned to be loved. I hadn't learned to love myself. And, it was a very humbling experience learning that I was more a beginner than I thought I was. But it was also a recognition that this journey is really long. No one really talks to us about it. I think so few of us even have that awareness that the journey is a long one and that we need to do it step by step and that we can't skip ahead and run ahead and try to do, like high level stuff when we are right at the beginning learning to lay our foundations. So that's how I learned that at some point, as we are striving through our efforts to know God and to love him and to deny ourselves and, if we're sincerely trying to be his disciples, at some point, I think we will come up against that truth that we're doing it with our own strength. We're doing it out of fear and insecurity. We're doing it, as a transaction without realizing it. We may think cognitively that, we're doing this freely. But if we know how to tune in to ourselves, to our bodies, to our emotions, we will actually realize that the data there is telling us, no, we are not doing this freely because everything is tense, and we are bypassing our emotions. We have to kind of like even imagine ourselves to be further along the journey than we actually are because we need to. There's a compulsion to need to be a good disciple because that has become our identity. The identity that is not really where we are, but where we need to be. You know, just think of how subtle and nuanced that is. But that's why, I really believe that's why so many of us get stuck. And we think we're doing a great job, or we're trying so hard, but actually we are stuck. And if we really want to make the breakthrough, to go beyond where we are, to keep striding towards that abundant life that Jesus said He came to give us, we need to recognize the truth of the reality that we are in, and we need to learn how to attune to our whole selves, because God speaks to us through our whole self. That includes our body, not just our mind. So it's not just about learning things, learning scripture or learning theology or even learning spirituality or practicing it. I mean, we need to do that. But at some point we realize that there is a disconnect between our understanding, because our understanding is limited by our experience, right? So if we haven't experienced what it means to be fully alive, we're not going to understand what does it mean to be fully alive. If we haven't experienced that abundant life that Christ came to give us, we're not going to be able to understand it in the right context, right? So this is a journey. And so I just wanted to take some time and kind of like put these two things together, the emphasis in scripture, and usually when we talk about discipleship, on self-denial and laying down our life and loving ourselves and knowing ourselves. They are actually not opposites. They are actually part of the same thing. Just think of it. Christianity, or our faith, I think even maybe most religions would say it's if you go into its depth, it can't be just about a moral code. It can't just be about ethical living, because you can do that without any faith at all. You can be a highly moral person and highly ethical person without any faith. Our faith in particular, and talk about Christianity, is about relationship. And when we talk about the fruits of that faith manifesting as love, and something that, what we might consider a high moral standard, is not through our strength, but it's through that relationship that is deepened with the Lord, that it is His love flowing through us and His life flowing through us. We love when we are not grounded in a posture of scarcity and fear. We can love really love, properly, truly love, when it's flowing from an abundance of being loved. So we need to look at that connection within ourselves and our capacity to receive love and to deepen our ability to receive God's love. And if it's not yet the time to practice dying to self, if we realize that at this point we need to practice what it means to be alive, to just by attuning to our wants and our needs, even if those wants and needs seem selfish, the humble thing, the true thing, the real thing where God meets us is in that want and in that need. And if it is fear that's keeping us from acknowledging that, it's also our ego that needs us to keep thinking that we are good Christians, good disciples, that's preventing us from acknowledging our real limitations and where we are, our wants, our needs. And it requires grace for us to just acknowledge, this is where I am. Maybe I'm earlier in the journey than I thought I was. But being able to do that, that's also progress, that's grace, and that's love.